All right, another Wednesday, another PTN Extra. He's Mike Irwin. I'm Evan Kamiko. You know the drill by now. You've hung out with us for a very, very long time, it feels like. Mike, we've got basketball to talk about. We've got football to talk about because Twitter was up in everywhere last night, whether it was Brandon Walker from Barstool local accounts. Could Arkansas have a coach? We'll dive into that in a little bit. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Again, this is PTN Extra. We don't know anything. You guys just listen to us. We don't know why. That's Mike Irwin. I'm Evan Kamiko. Mike, let's dive into it. Let's start with basketball. John Calipari and company getting a 93-56 win last night over UCA. First half, yeah, they were up by about 10 or so points, but it didn't feel like they were really playing their best game. What do you take of the whole game? What did you make of this win over UCA?
I still think they're trying to adjust a little bit inside. And Brazil didn't play. They said he had back spasms. A lot of people are speculating that he kind of got sat down for popping the guy in the face with a towel after the Michigan State game. But for whatever reason, he wasn't there. So again, you got Pringle, and I thought Pringle overall, maybe a slow start, but he looked really strong toward the end of the game. Ewan still, I think he's got some work to do, but he's got time to do that. But you've got a three-man rotation there inside, and you ended up with just two. I think that was an effect, had an effect. The good news is Carter Knox had a really good game, so he bounced back from that subpar performance after he came back off of a toe injury. Just talking to a lot of people that watch the game, that know basketball, they think these last two games, the two freshmen have been a little out of control, too much trying to do their thing. And nobody was complaining about that in the two exhibition games in the season opener because they just looked amazing. And they haven't been bad, but the main thing is they've been taking a lot of shots, scoring the same, but taking a lot more shots to score. And so I think even Cal himself mentioned that, we got to share the ball more. We can't just, it looked like there was almost no ball movement. It was just like, okay, they've got that zone defense up there. What do we do? Oh, let's just shoot over it. And there were points in the game in which they just rained threes, and then you go through a drought. And that's when UCA would come back a little bit. But, I mean, it was a blowout win. It was almost 40 points. To me, it doesn't really matter what happens at certain points of the game. If you finish strong, which they've done, this team has a tendency, even in the game they lost, they came back in the last few minutes and made it close. So I like the fact that this is a team that when it gets down to the end of the game, they do their thing.
Yeah, and to your point about the two freshmen, they did have a lot of shots. I mean, I'll read this correctly off my phone. Darius Acuff Jr. finished 9 of 16 from the floor. Malik Thomas, 6 of 17. Thomas was 4 of 13 from behind the arc. Acuff, 3 of 8. Your other starters in Carter Knox, DJ Wagner, and Nick Pringle were a combined 5 of 10 from beyond the arc. So clearly the volume of shots is really ranging from those two freshmen. And to your point, you'd like to see some other guys get going a little bit. It was great. I know the big story of last night was Carter Knox. Finished with a double-double. I believe had, 19 and 10, 19 points, 10 rebounds. It was the Carter Knox that we thought we were going to get earlier in the year. Obviously, injuries don't help. We saw how this team had to battle injuries last year and saw where that led them in the start of conference play. But getting Carter's confidence back, I think, was really big. And for him to go out and have a double-double, and he said after the game, look, I wish I played that way against Michigan State. We would have won. And the reality is, yeah, they probably would have gotten that win on the road in Sparty had Carter Knox played at least half of what he played like in that game yesterday. So really good to see Carter Knox finally get going.
Yeah, and I think part of what the negativity that we're getting from some of the fans is a holdover from that Michigan State game. They don't like the way that went, and then they want you to come back and just look perfect in this game because of the opponent, and that didn't happen. But again, you win by almost 40. So to me, though, when you start talking about that Michigan State game, I wonder how many people watched Kentucky go to Louisville. Louisville is a team that's been down. Kentucky's dominated lately. It's like, ha, ha, ha. Well, it's no ha, ha, ha anymore because they went to Louisville and they were down big at various times, came back, made it interesting, and then just folded down the stretch and gave Louisville the win. And now Louisville comes in here in December, and unless something happens between now and then, they're going to be pretty highly ranked. So we'll get a really good game in Bud Walton Arena, and I'm looking forward to that. But if you want to criticize Arkansas for losing that game, Kentucky was number one in some of those metrics, and now look what that got them. Yeah. I mean, they got beat and they lost to Louisville, and their fans, which had just been ragging all over Arkansas for losing that game to Michigan State, they're not saying anything now.
Yeah, it feels like the Kentucky crowd is really quiet at home, which is a good thing. Again, you get a little humbled. Pat Kelsey, though, building a really good program up there in Louisville, and now you're seeing kind of the fruit of that year one. Last year, they beat an Indiana team that was supposed to be much better than I think ended up on the floor. And Louisville now, the ceiling is really high. They come into here, I believe that's on November 30th, December 1st, the SEC ACC Challenge, one of those 2 days. And that's going to be a really fun test for Arkansas because you get in that week span Duke on Thanksgiving and then that game here at Bud Walton Arena. But what is interesting to me is going to be, will the fans be there? Because I know last night, I mean, we can talk about it. We have talked about it because
we need to continue to talk about it.
Yeah, and your team takes a little bit of that mentality from your fan base to start the game. A lackluster start because you had a lackluster crowd last night. And I get it. People from around the state, you're not going to come up to Bud Walton Arena early in the season on a Tuesday night in November to play Central Arkansas.
But figure out a way to get rid of those tickets.
Right. How do you do that? What's the way forward to do that?
Well, they've got a number you can call, and you just give it in, give the ticket number, and then they can come in and somebody can get it and scan it. Need more students. The students are the ones that are going to show up for these games. So get more students in there in a game in which a midweek game in which you're not going to have a lot of people coming up from. But it's not just Central Arkansas people not showing up. It's people here, a lot of corporate tickets out there, and those people tend to go, I'll go for the big games. These games aren't that big a deal. I'll watch at home. And you just can't have that mentality and expect these guys to come out fired up when they walk in here with a Hall of Fame coach and a team loaded with talent, and you look up and you see the place half empty.
Yeah, and I'm curious, right? Like, you talk about the students, you talk about kind of the local big money weeks. Is it, and I know we haven't really talked about this on PTN Extra, and again, Bud Walton did a lot of remodeling this year. There's now a new club area that impacted the media room and all of these things. Does that have something to do with it, potentially, of how they remodeled the facility? I know fans online haven't been overly thrilled because of season tickets have been taken away. Does that also have an impact of fans saying, hey, we're not necessarily happy with the changes that have happened? Now you're seeing the result here in the early going of the season. Again, the fans are going to show up. They'll be there for Louisville. They'll be there during SEC play. But is it an impact right now when you can't get, ESPN says 19,000 showed up last night. That's definitely not what it looked like in at least the TV. Is that a direct result of what's going on?
Well, there's no way to know, but it could be a silent protest by some people who've been moved to other seats, and now they're sitting there. And I can't tell you how much I dislike watching a game last night, and they do a close-up over there of something involving the bench. I can't remember what it was. It showed. I think it may have been when Cal was over there walking around on the wrong side. Yeah. He was closer to UCA's bench than his own, and the ref came over and said something to him. But it was a tight shot, and there, right next to the bench, right there, are fans just sitting there. I mean, I'm here. Players are right there. What is that? I mean, you wouldn't even think about that for football. Why do you have it in basketball? Just because you're trying to make more money. I maintain there's other ways to generate money than doing things like that.
Yeah, but that is where we are now in Arkansas basketball and the seating at Bud Walton Arena. So let's move off that topic. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting because it's the 2026 signing day today. Abdou Toure, J.J. Andrews, a very highly touted, both of them, big prospects. Toure out of Connecticut, as well as J.J. Andrews out of here in Little Rock. How big is that? A 4-star and a 5-star coming in. Andrews has all the hype in the world. These will be the next kind of guys, the next crop of talent that Cal brings here to the Hill.
Well, I mean, it's good, but they got more work to do. And we don't know what he's going to do with the portal. But what we do know is there's a bunch of guys on this team that aren't going to be here next year. So he's got some recruiting work to do. Now, most people don't worry about that because that's his thing. That's what he does. But again, he seems to have been indicating that next year's team they're going to have more freshmen on next year's team. So what are we talking about here? It's the signing period, the early signing period. Is there going to be more? And then how about the late period? How many come in there? And then again, what do you do with the portal?
Yeah.
Because he's got to rebuild next year.
Absolutely. Wrapping up here on PTN Extra, our first topic on basketball and men's basketball itself. Samford coming up Friday night, 7 o'clock. What do you want to see out of this Arkansas team to take that step forward and kind of, re-get in that headset of, hey, we're the best team. They know they're one of the best teams in the country, but to get in that mindset with Duke coming up in about 2 weeks.
I think you need to see Brazil come back and look like Brazil did at the end of last year in the first 3 games of this year, the 2 exhibition and the first regular season game. He needs to look like that. And then I want to see those 2 freshmen a little bit more under control and a little bit involving, slow it down a little bit at times, and especially if you get a zone thrown up against you, figure out a way to penetrate that zone. And that takes patience. You can't just get frustrated and jump up and shoot a 3 every time you turn around.
Yeah, a little less hero ball from these guys. Again, the ceiling is there. We know it. Everybody knows it. John Rothstein saying earlier in the week, Arkansas is going to be a team that you do not want to see in March. And I agree with that. I'd assume you agree with that as well, as long as the trend of development is anything like what we saw with Billy Richmond last year and some of the other freshmen that we saw, I was going to say Adu Thero. He wasn't a freshman, but Billy Richmond, Carter Knox, etc. So hopefully Boogie Flan, those guys kind of stay in that development path. But that's going to do it for this part of PTN Extra. Mikey, it's a Wednesday. My head is everywhere. We'll be right back on the other side of the break talking football. Don't go anywhere. Back here on PTN Extra, Evan Kamiko, Mike Irwin hanging out with you. Mike, we've talked basketball. Let's talk a little bit about football now. It's an interesting time for the Razorbacks. You've got 3 games left this season. They're all against your rivalry teams. It starts with LSU, a trip to Baton Rouge. The Tigers favored by 5.5 points. And then you've got Texas, and then you finish the season here against Missouri at the end of the month after the Thanksgiving week. Let's talk about LSU. LSU, what do you expect out of this game? Another team with an interim head coach, Frank Wilson, down there in Baton Rouge, trying to right the ship as Brian Kelly no longer the head Tiger in the Bayou.
So let's start off talking about what's different about them now that they have an interim coach. You get Kelly's out the door. He's not running the show anymore, so what's different about them? And we saw that on display against Alabama. Okay, they were better defensively. They were more aggressive defensively. They went after the quarterback. They took chances. They had multiple blitz packages. This is exactly the kind of stuff that disrupts Arkansas, tends to cause Taylor Green problems. So that part of it doesn't look very good at all. Arkansas is going to have to be much more disciplined in this game than they typically have been. And mostly Taylor Green. Again, he's got to trust his offensive line. He's got to stay in the pocket, move forward. Look for shorter passes. Look for people to get open quickly and not worry so much about throwing deep and trying to peel around the corner and get 30 or 40 yards because I don't think it's going to happen. So there's that. That's kind of the stuff you worry about. On the other hand, LSU has never been this year very good offensively. I think they're 14th in scoring in the SEC right now. They're down there. Their running game is bad, just right at 100 yards rushing. I said that, 100 yards.
Yeah.
That's bad when you're running for 100 yards. But one of the reasons is because they throw it all the time, and they're much better at that. 240 yards a game, that's not quite where Arkansas is. But that's where the challenge is. So what's Arkansas's challenge? Well, in these press conferences that I've been looking at, basically what they're saying is, okay, we got to have pressure up front. We've got to get takeaways. We've got to get interceptions. We've got to create fumbles. We've got to create lost yardage plays. And all of that sounds good, but that's exactly the opposite of what we generally see.
Yeah.
We see the other team doing that. So I think Arkansas is going to have to change things in this game from what we typically see for them to win the game. And I continue to say, and I will continue to say it, if you ask me if I think they're going to win, I would say no. And I'm going to continue to say that until they prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Because every week I say they're not going to win, and they don't win.
Yeah.
You might say, well, just say they're going to win. Well, I don't know. Okay, they're going to win. We'll see if that works. But the point is, it looks promising from a defensive standpoint against their offense, but it doesn't look as promising from Arkansas's offensive standpoint because these guys will come after you. And that's what has caused Arkansas problems this year.
The bright spot when we talk about Arkansas's defense this year has got to be Quincy Rhodes Jr. 8 sacks on the season, leading the team. He's been a monster, but it feels like it comes in spurts, right? Like, we've seen, one or two turnovers since the Memphis game.
Right.
And that's me being nice is saying two. Definitely one. Everyone remembers the Kani Walker pick six. I think they had another interception in the last 2 weeks. But again, it's things this Arkansas team has not done well that is what they're saying they need to do. And it's like, yeah, if we can all say things that we haven't done well in our life and fix that, wouldn't, take a magic wand, it'd be easy. Right. But that's not football and that's not life. You've got to find ways to do that. And if Quincy Rhodes is only getting sacked so often, you need Cam Ball to step up. Well, where's Cam Ball been most of the season? Pretty darn quiet, if you ask me. On the other side of him, again, who's that going to be? Charlie Collins, is he going to be playing? Who knows? He's still dealing with an injury right now and doesn't really know, Petrino said earlier this week, doesn't really know how much of a leash he'll have this week if he plays. But what's going to be key for me, Mike, is going to be the running game of Arkansas. You mentioned kind of the LSU rushing defense. They're allowing 126 yards per game. That's about 37th in the country. Arkansas's offense is averaging 208.8 yards on the ground. Can Arkansas go into Baton Rouge? And let's be real, it's a day game, so it probably won't be as crazy in Death Valley as it would be in a night game that we've seen the last couple of years.
That's right.
So can Arkansas go down there? Can they get Braylon Russell going really early on? He's only had about, 70, 80 yards on the ground the last 2 weeks. A very, different side as we were seeing. Can they get Mike Washington to keep doing what he's doing? Had a bounce back week against Mississippi State, but it hasn't necessarily looked fantastic like he did earlier this season. Really, after that fumble against Memphis is where we've seen the offense kind of fall apart and the running game going a little bit downhill. So if Arkansas can be able to establish the run early, then you can open up Taylon Green a little bit, but you're not going to go into Death Valley and win on the shoulder of Taylon Green, in my honest opinion. You can't ask him to throw the ball 40 times and expect to go and beat the Tigers.
Well, the good news is because of the open date, they're healthier offensively than they have been. Got a couple of offensive linemen back, although Shaq, it looks like he's still out. But the offensive line is going to be key in this game. They've just got to get the job done. They got a pass block, they got a run block. And if they do that, I think Arkansas has a chance to score points in this game, and I don't think it will take as many points to win this game. But still, you need consistency. You don't need to, score 3 points in the second half. I'd like to see them come out, score points in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. That's an ideal, but these are the types of things they're going to have to do to win. But here's another factor, and we're going to talk more about this when we talk about the coaching search. Mm-hmm. But the word is starting to filter out about all kinds of possibilities for a coach. Maybe somebody's already agreed, or maybe they're coming in here and they're going to visit while the team's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying, I want to be careful about this and clear about this because people have misquoted me. There is so much out there being told to people in the media. I don't believe anything specifically. I pass it on. Mm-hmm. I passed it on last week that I was told the search was virtually over, that they'd found who they wanted. And now I'm told that they're going to bring this person in. That doesn't mean they will. It doesn't mean I'm saying they're going to bring him in. That's just what I have been told. And there are people all over the internet. There are fans. There are fan boards talking James Franklin. He's going to come here. He's going to do this. There are people that believe he will come in because the team's away. Mm-hmm. And so people won't see this. You got a Friday night, you got a bunch of guys out, everybody's running around either on Dixon Street having a good time or they're at football games, high school football games. What better time to come in a black limousine in the dark at night and unload and go inside the field and walk around and see the stadium, and maybe they could turn the lights on once they have it secured and nobody's in there. He looks around, he goes up to the Broyle Center, maybe he goes back down to the Fred Smith Center and sees the locker room and the facilities they have. Maybe all that happens, maybe it doesn't, but don't think that the players aren't aware of all this because there's just been too much talk about it this week. Could be completely wrong. Petrino could still be in the mix. I don't know what they've been told about that, but that could affect the game if they think, okay, Petrino's not going to be the coach, we're getting somebody else in here. What does that mean for our coaches, our assistant coaches? And I think that whoever's doing the job search has tried to be very careful in throwing up smoke screens to prevent some of this stuff from being said because they don't want it to affect the team. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. And I think it could be a factor.
Right, and we'll talk about the coaching search in just a second. We're going to take a quick break, but it's to the point of you've lost 7 straight games. Like if I'm on a losing team, it's so hard mentally to stay locked in when say you are a Taylor Green and you might get drafted. Like, yeah, there's stuff to play for, but you're getting hit all the time. You're injured. You come back. It's a 7-game losing streak. Like, let's remember the reality of the situation. This isn't like, oh, we have something to play for. We might get to go to the Liberty Bowl. Like, you're not even playing for the Liberty Bowl this year. You're playing for your future. So there are reasons to stay locked in. But again, the Mississippi State loss, so heartbreaking. It's tough to necessarily stay locked in if you are some of these guys who are kind of looking to the future of what's next. But you kind of alluded to it when we come back on PTN Extra and wrap up shop. We're talking coaching search. Stay with us. We'll be right back after one last break. Back here closing up the show on this Wednesday afternoon. PTN Extra, Mike Irwin. I'm Evan Kamiko. Mike, you alluded to it already. Let's dive into this coaching search. A lot of smoke on Twitter last night about Arkansas potentially landing somebody big, finding their guy. What can you tell fans? Again, we don't really know much up here. We're just relaying what we think we know, what we have heard. What have you heard that you can tell fans?
Again, pretty much what I was told last week, that they either already have a guy they think is maybe committed, that they want to just bring him in and let him look around. Maybe there's some things he needs to see. But that, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that I have one source all along who said that for about 2 weeks now. And this source says it's Franklin. Okay, there are a lot of other people that believe it's Franklin. I don't know who their sources are. I have somebody that I trust telling me don't believe any of this stuff because he said they're just putting smoke out there. I do know, for instance, that there was an article written over the weekend basically implying that the Lindsays, John David and Lindy, who both played at Arkansas and their dad played on the national championship team, that they were pushing to somehow get P.J. Fleck in here so they could bring John David's son back in here as the quarterback, and he's had good success. Minnesota has a decent year. They're not tearing it up, but John David told me specifically that story was not true. He said, we're not trying to pressure anybody. We're not talking to anybody about PJ coming in here. We're not pushing that. Yeah. You know, my son is at Minnesota, and that's where I'm focused. So he's saying that's not true. Well, that's an example of a story that was written and pretty much made it look like that's what's going on. They're trying to pressure everybody and put pressure on the coaches and whoever's making the decision to get Drake Lindsay to come in here with P.J. Fleck. And he's saying that's just not the way it is. Okay, there was a story I read a couple of days ago that the Tyson plane was up near Chicago. Well, that would be Northwestern, and so now Northwestern's coach is what, in the mix? Yeah. Then there's this. There's a story floating around that a person that generally knows what they're talking about on these searches said, yeah, I know who it is. I'm not going to say because it's really a yuck hire and it's going to make everybody mad, and I'm hoping it's wrong. And like maybe they just told me that to throw me off key. So you see there's just smoke everywhere. And nobody knows what to believe. Yeah, navigating through smoke. I think that's the toughest test. Mike, as we wind down here on PTN Extra, is there anything we missed, anything else that we want to talk about this week in the world of Razorback sports? No, I just, again, I hope we don't have a situation in the football game where you got another close loss. You somehow got to get away from these close losses. The close loss in the basketball game at Michigan State, not the time for that. We need something that's not a close loss, And so, again, we got another basketball game coming up this week. Hopefully it'll be good all the way through. And hopefully something will happen in this football game that will be different. I don't know what it is, but these guys have worked hard, and Bobby Petrino keeps stressing that he hasn't noticed any drop-off in their effort. They still want to win a game. They still want to do something. And maybe they can catch on fire here toward the end. And the only thing different than a one-score loss is either a blowout, which I don't think any Arkansas fans want, because that'd put the nail in the coffin, or a win, hopefully, as Arkansas takes on LSU this weekend. Battle for the Golden Boot, that's coming up this weekend for PTN Extra this week. Our crew back there that makes everything happen. That's Mike Irwin. I'm Evan Kamiko saying so long. We'll see you back here next Wednesday.